right, excellent. Thanks everyone for spending a few minutes with us this afternoon. My name is Tim Kratek. I am the CEO and founder at Ironside. Many of you I've met before along the last 25 or so years. We've been helping folks with analytics and data. I've got a few folks from my team that are going to share their point of view on what we learned at Amazon reInvent, AWS reInvent, a few weeks ago. Keith, Jeff, Josh, and Catherine all have significant experience deploying these technologies, understanding them, and applying them to our customers' problems. So I will give each of them an opportunity to say hello as they jump into their particular section. All right, so again, Ironside, we are a AWS advanced tier partner. We have been helping organizations with data and analytics challenges for quite some time. Today, we're going to talk about what we learned at reInvent and what we feel is important for you to understand. We're going to speak specifically about QuickSuite, which is AWS's latest iteration of BI and AI. There were a number of AI and agentic service announcements, quite a bit of evolution in the data engineering space. And then we'll talk a little bit about, kind of how to have further conversations with us about this topic. As I mentioned, Ironside has been in business for 26 years now. I guess that's dating my age a little bit. We've worked with over 900 companies. We've been in the AWS ecosystem for greater than 7 years. And I'm happy to say that we are an advanced tier partner. We have accomplished our generative AI, which is now our AI services competency, as well as our data and analytics services competency. Really excited about our evolving and growing partnership with AWS and helping our customers, both ones that we've worked with for a long time, as well as those that we are meeting recently, down the journey toward enhanced data and analytics. Across the bottom, we talk a little bit about our practice areas. Again, I think many of you know us and have worked with us and understand that we're bringing practical implementation capabilities and really helping you apply these technologies to really improve your business, right? At the end of the day, technology without a business problem is not an efficient way to make investments. So while generative AI was the clear foundation, agentic AI emerged as a powerful defining theme at AWS reInvent. This focus moved beyond simple content creation to the deployment of sophisticated autonomous agents powered by models like Amazon Bedrock, designed to perform complex multi-step tasks, from automating entire business workflows to providing hyper-personalized customer service. The keynote emphasized the shift from humans prompting models to models acting on our behalf, highlighting new tools and architectures built to orchestrate and manage these intelligent agents at scale and with enterprise-grade governance. At a really macro level, what this means is that the technology is evolving. It's evolving to be self-serving. It's evolving to be without interaction. It's evolving to be able to increase the efficiency at which AI is affecting our business processes and even our own lives, kind of on a daily basis. We're going to touch on a number of things that AWS has released. And, generally speaking, we like to think of the AWS services as building blocks on which we, along with our customers, can build solutions to solve business problems. From an Ironside perspective, we've been deploying AI initially with machine learning AI and then moving into generative AI and now agentic AI capabilities and solutions towards really, really greatly improving the IT methodologies and processes and leveraging the data and the opportunities to take advantage of technology. If you look at the bottom, there was a comment here from Matt Garman, the AWS CEO. I'm going to read it because I think it's pretty powerful. Agents will have as much impact on your business as the internet or the cloud. We are moving from a world where you use software to a world where software works for you. we believe that this shift is very, very compelling. We also believe that um, you know our customers are somewhere along the journey. Many of you have made investments in data, in BI, in AI over time, and you're in varying stages of maturity. And I think from our standpoint, our goal and our mandate every day is to help meet you where you are and help you improve. We're going to talk about sort of I won't say the bleeding edge because this is all real, the edge of maturity and evolution. There's a lot of foundational things that we believe our customers need to do to move from sort of their legacy data and analytics and BI and dashboarding applications into really significantly leveraging the power of generative AI and then ultimately agentic AI. So from our standpoint, it's always about, and it's most important to focus on business problems that you have, not just the technology, right? So thinking about how does the projects and the technology initiatives that you take on help you meet your business objectives. So it's always a direct correlation. We believe it should always have a direct correlation. We're currently in the middle of building a generative AI capability to enhance the ERP of one of our customers, and then really in service of their 132 end customers. So we're excited about how quickly we can develop it, sort of the capabilities for code generation, the capabilities for automation and reducing cost, and really the benefits of leveraging technology to do things like fraud detection, context checking, and grammar really have the ability to be more efficient and more powerful and more capable than a human would if they were doing that themselves. So, we'll talk more about that later on. And so, really, I'm not going to get too deeply into each of these different things. Obviously, Nova models are continuing to evolve, and in certain situations, we believe that they're exactly the right LLM to use to solve the particular problem. We like to help evaluate all the different things that are available from an LLM perspective and really have it fit for purpose. Quick Suite, right? So Ironside has been working with AWS for a number of years around a technology called QuickSight, which is their leading generation business intelligence or generative BI tool. Moving into Quick Suite, which was just recently released, Ironside worked with AWS in the beta process around helping them understand, how the technology would work, how existing customers would adapt the technology. And the way I want you to think about Quick Suite, and Catherine will talk about this a little bit, is really taking the next step of evolving into an AI-assisted exercise on top of sort of the quantitative and qualitative data that you have in your business, right? So it's an interactive capability that allow you to converse in natural language, build automations, and really evolve how a business user will interface with the tools, and then ultimately sort of all of the data that you're curating within your business. And then again, there's a bunch of technical and primitive service capabilities that we'll discuss as well. All right, with that, I'll hand it to Catherine.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. So my name is Catherine Bizdell. I'm one of our services lead here at Ironside. And as Tim mentioned, I'm going to be focused on Quick Suite business user enablement and kind of the highlights that came out of AWS from reInvent, specifically through a business user's lens. So there were a lot of AI and analytics announcements, but what really stood out with Quick Suite was how intentionally AWS positioned it for everyday business users. So while we all know it is a technical tool, there was a focus on it being an AI-powered workspace that helps people understand their business and take action. And in my words, work smarter, not harder. So the themes that I'm going to touch on come from business-focused sessions like democratize access to insights with Amazon Quick Suite and how Amazon deployed Quick Suite across thousands of business users, which emphasized enablement, adoption, and real-world usage. So I'm going to start with how Quick Suite helps business users get to understanding faster, and then talk about once you have that understanding, how you can actually turn those insights into action. So, one of the strongest themes at reInvent was reducing the friction between business users and insight. So, starting off with natural language access to insights, QuickSuite gives business users the ability to ask questions in plain language instead of navigating dashboards, needing to know SQL or even submitting report requests to your technical team. So, questions like what changed this month? Why did performance drop in this region? How are we tracking versus last quarter? AWS emphasized that these answers are grounded in governed enterprise data, meaning your permissions, definitions, and approved sources are respected. And that grounding is really critical because it's what makes business users comfortable relying on AI answers instead of double checking everything. So if it's trusted data going in, you can trust the answers coming out of it. The next topic was, AI generated summaries and explanations. So rather than showing a chart and leaving interpretation up to the user, QuickSuite can explain, what's changed, what's unusual, and what's driving the trend. And this is especially valuable for, executives who want context quickly, but maybe don't want to do a deep dive into a dashboard or a visual. So they can rely on these AI generated summaries to understand what changed without, having to investigate a bar chart, a line chart to see what pops out at them. Moving on to research support through AI teammates. So one of the newer capabilities that AWS emphasized this year is research support. So QuickSuite can now assist with research-oriented tasks that business users do constantly, but rarely think of as analytics or an analytical task. So some examples that AWS shared include pulling together performance context across multiple sources, comparing trends across time periods or business units, and synthesizing findings into a concise narrative for leadership. So instead of manually pulling data, writing notes, stitching together that update, AI helps gather, analyze, and summarize that information in one place. So this can turn, what used to be a 30-minute, 1 hour, half day task into something much faster and ultimately more consistent. And the last topic that I want to touch on related to this is, AWS made a strong point about meeting users where they already work, meaning access in the tools that they're already using. So QuickSuite isn't really meant to be, another destination tool. Insights can actually surface in places that your users are already living in, like email, whether that's Gmail or Outlook, collaboration tools like Slack and Teams, and even existing business applications. So users don't have to leave the systems that they already work in order to leverage and take advantage of QuickSuite. So this really matters when it comes to adoption, because when insights show up naturally in your existing workflows and your day-to-day kind of flow of your business, users are far more likely to engage with them instead of ignoring, yet another platform that an organization is rolling out. So from our perspective at Ironside, this really fundamentally changes how business users interact with analytics. Business users can spend less time hunting for information, and now they can spend more time actually understanding it. So at the same time, this only works when organizations invest in strong data foundations and governance, because your AI driven insights are only valuable if they're trusted, which goes back to the first point about trusted data in equals trusted data out. So the key takeaway here is really faster understanding, clearer insights, less friction, and more confidence for business users. Another major theme at reInvent was about moving beyond insight and into action. So talking about reusable AI-driven reporting workflows was one of the most impactful announcements this year, and that's about the ability to turn recurring insight needs into reusable AI-driven workflows. So business users can define something once, like a weekly KPI summary or a monthly performance review, and let QuickSuite run it consistently. And what this does is it eliminates repeated manual effort and reduces variation in how those insights are produced. So it's always being done the same way. You set it up once and you can trust it every time it repeats. And then building on that, AWS also showed how QuickSuite supports AI-assisted business workflows, not just reporting. So AI can generate summaries, compare results, highlight changes, and even prepare stakeholder-ready updates. So this shifts analytics from something users can check occasionally to something that actively supports how they work day to day. The AI handles the analysis and preparation consistently, and the business user stays focused on reviewing the insight and deciding what to do next. And that's the real productivity gain that AWS emphasized at reInvent. I also just want to highlight the difference between AI reporting and business workflows because I know they're similar, especially in naming. So, a reporting workflow might deliver a weekly sales summary every Monday, while the business workflow is going to help explain why those sales changed, prepare a leadership ready narrative, and support the follow up without someone manually doing all of that work. So, the two do go hand in hand, but I wanted to just call out the difference between those two things. Collaboration was another strong focus at reInvent. So instead of sharing dashboards or raw data and hoping, everyone interprets it the same way, QuickSuite allows teams to share AI generated summaries and explanations. So that means that stakeholders are always reacting to the same narrative, what changed, why it matters, what to pay attention to, rather than debating how to read a chart or what something might mean. So these insights can be shared directly with teammates and leaders in the tools they already use, which makes collaboration much more natural. It also speeds up follow through because the team spends less time explaining the data and more time discussing next steps and what that might mean. And what it really leads to is, insights becoming a shared asset rather than something siloed in an individual's dashboard. And lastly, I just want to touch on the scalable enablement pattern. So, AWS spent time talking about what it actually takes to enable this successfully and at scale. So, in the session, how Amazon deployed QuickSuite across thousands of business users, they actually talked about their own experience deploying this internally at AWS and kind of some of the adoption challenges that they had and how they addressed those. So, the emphasis was on role based use cases, having clear guardrails, training users how to ask effective questions so that they're actually getting value out of what they're asking. And lastly, setting expectations around where AI fits into someone's daily work. So again, just to wrap this up, from our perspective at Ironside, this is where the real value shows up. QuickSuite helps shift analytics from passive consumption to the active support of business workflows. And the biggest opportunity is automating repetitive insight tasks. But again, the success depends on thoughtful enablement and governance. So the main takeaway here is helping business users consistently turn insights into follow through with less effort. So, making sure we're all working smarter and not harder. So, in summary, what we learned at reInvent is really that QuickSuite is less about individual features and more about a new way of working, giving business users AI powered support to understand their business faster and act with greater confidence as long as the right foundations are in place. So, with that being said about QuickSuite announcements, I'm going to pass it off to Josh to talk about some of the AI and agentic service announcements from reInvent.
Thank you, Catherine. So, with respect to AI and agentic work services, what I found really interesting at reInvent was the idea of accelerating the path to an iterative process. Any good data scientist, unfortunately, spends about 95% of his or her time building infrastructure out, building pipelines, wrangling the data into place, and then the cool, alluring data-driven insights. You only get to spend about 5% of your time combing through those results. So both with respect to SageMaker and Agent Core, there are a lot of exciting announcements that are really going to accelerate that iterative process. Across the board here, you can see the word serverless showing up plenty of times, the word zero infrastructure showing up plenty of times. And one-click fine-tuning is also something that people are probably going to find of some appeal. So firstly, double-clicking into serverless model customization. The idea here is that we want to allow developers to fine-tune models without managing the underlying infrastructure or compute resources. We're looking to iterate faster and deploy faster. You don't want the dreaded scenario in which you've done a lot of legwork on this beautiful model that could bring a lot of value to the business, and it's withering away in some Jupyter notebook because you don't have the cycles or the man hours to get something into production and iterate on the pipeline. So serverless model customization means that we're that much closer to spending not 5% of our time on the, alluring part of data science, the data-driven part of data science. We're increasing that proportion of work from legwork to insights. ML Flow is obviously a very popular tool for pipeline management in the iterative machine learning process, ML Ops. And that now has a serverless integration into AWS. So there's zero infrastructure experimentation required. You're going to get automatic scaling, and this is going to plug in seamlessly to all of your SageMaker pipelines. So what's really exciting about HyperPod, check, pointless, and elastic training is we're enabling instant fault recovery and, again, automated scaling based on resource availability and rapid resumption during failures. Nothing's worse than when you have a big expensive pipeline that's running. You finally get to the point of the process where you're training your model or you're drawing inferences on it. And then one failure out of, tens of thousands of rows, millions of rows throws a wrench in everything. You're getting automatic resumption when these failures occur in a serverless distributed manner. And then the last most exciting thing for my day job's perspective on the next flow here is SageMaker Jumpstart. So building cross-validation grids, performing grid search on hyperparameters is something that I think data scientists, it was a necessary evil to not necessarily waste, but definitely spend a lot of time making sure your hyperparameters were tuned as needed. Sometimes you can have the right model for the right use case, but if you have a slight misunderstanding in your model about the true relationships between your data points, that's a big obstacle between your business, you and your business getting the most amount of value out of a deployed model. So now it's just point and click. You're simplifying the process of fine tuning any popular open source model you might think of. This applies to SageMaker Jumpstart. You have pre-configured pipelines if something is a rather rinse and repeat workflow, let's say. And then, of course, built-in valuation metrics too. So you have a holistic view of how your model's performing across whatever your KPI of interest might be. So in sum, we're spending less of our time performing infrastructure management and more of our time doing the statistical analyses, the ML work that really stimulates a data scientist. And I'm very grateful for it. I'm certain our clients will be grateful for it as we can iterate more quickly on any data sets they send our way. Want to pivot slightly now to some of the announcements from Bedrock Agent Core in particular. So agents are, they're here, they are operating, they're in production. And what we really want to do is garner as much trust as we possibly can within our agentic workflows. So policy controls, quality evaluations, memory capabilities, so we're not losing context in real time, and then overall observability and monitoring is going to allow us to garner a lot more trust in our agents before we fully hand them the keys to our business, as it were. So policy controls are going to allow us to have real-time deterministic boundaries on agent actions. So what tools can they access? What APIs are they allowed to interact with? And we can define this using natural language. So a business user who has a set of criteria for how they want the agent to interact, you can state that in plain English, and Bedrock can translate that into what types of hard-coded guardrails we want. And this is also enforced independently of the agent code or model. So there's good persistence in those policy controls across use cases. Next, we'll hop into quality evaluations. And here we've got fully managed continuous monitoring. There are multiple pre-built evaluators for LLM correctness, let's say, tool usage, but then there's also custom options for assessing the agent performance in production. So given these, this given scenario, did my agent behave the way I wanted it to in this scenario? And if not, how can we correct that and fine tune it? Next, we'll talk about enhanced memory capability. So the bottom line here is this idea of a context window. How relevant is the information that an agent or an LLM is fetching for me based on the information I'm feeding it and all of the other information it's historically been trained on? So this is allowing agents to remember user preferences and learn from experience in a more natural context-aware, scenario. If I'm an engineer and I want to know how to build a bridge, Shakespeare's anthology of works probably isn't relevant content to what the LLM should fetch when I'm asking it questions. So these enhanced memory capabilities are going to allow our agents and the LLMs they're interacting with to hone in on the most relevant information for a given use case. And then finally, improved observability and monitoring. We're going to get way deeper insights into agent behavior without having to manually construct that observability. I've built such observability for recent projects, and the fact that this is now baked into Agent Core is really going to accelerate ideation to production from an agentic perspective. And then our tracing is easier, so debugging is easier, and optimizing our production environments is ultimately easier. No one likes when anything breaks, especially an agent when it's deployed. So this increased observability is going to allow us to rest easier at night, knowing that we've given some trust in our business to our agents that we have deployed. So bringing it all home, whether it was with respect to SageMaker or with respect to some of the announcements from Agent Core, this is all really about accelerating the iterative process so that we're spending our time ideating and we're not spending our time toiling with building the necessary infrastructure to experiment in classical ML or LLM applications. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague Jeff to discuss some data engineering announcements from reInvent.
All right, thanks, Josh. My name is Jeff Spear. I'm the Director of Data Engineering and Business Intelligence at Ironside. I'm going to be talking more on the data engineering side today about some of the stuff that sort of underlies a lot of these other announcements and innovations. We can go to the next slide. So the first area where there was a lot of innovation and several announcements is Iceberg. Iceberg is an open format, and it's a more than a file format. It's really a table format, and so it is a way to have a database that is effectively usable by multiple sources instead of being sort of proprietary like most SQL databases. It's something where anything that's Iceberg compatible can leverage that data. And so what Amazon has announced this year is S3 tables support for Iceberg. So S3 tables was something that was announced in preview last year. It came out early in 2025, and it allows you to basically use the Iceberg format within S3, and S3 and Amazon, AWS, will handle a lot of the sort of housekeeping and such for you. So Iceberg gives you a lot of interesting capabilities like snapshots and time travel, schema evolution, and ACID transactions. So basically you can have multiple sources writing at once, and it will make sure that they don't overwrite each other. But that requires some housekeeping. It requires some processes to make sure that things run properly. And so if you use your own Iceberg, you can put Iceberg files in S3, but then you have to manage all that or have something else do it. With S3 tables, it will take care of all of that for you. It also supports the S3 intelligent tier concept. So basically your Iceberg data that isn't very commonly used will be put in colder storage and cost you less. You can also create read replicas. So if you've got lots of consumption of these tables, you can have the data replicated to another S3 bucket and read from there. So you can increase your concurrency. And they've made it one-click available with SageMaker Unified Studio. So you can take an S3 Iceberg table and just open it up in SageMaker Unified Studio directly from the S3 console. So it makes it a very easy way to analyze your data. So Glue has added support for materialized views with Iceberg. So if you have Iceberg data, whether it's in S3 tables, S3 Iceberg tables, or S3 tables, just normal S3 bucket, you can just define a materialized view using Spark SQL. You can set it to refresh automatically on a periodic basis or whenever you tell it to. And without writing any extra code, Glue will just take the data from the source and instantiate the materialized view so that if you query that, you're not running any SQL, you're getting data very, very quickly and efficiently. Moreover, Spark queries, if you write a query that would be better off using the materialized view, it will automatically use that view as long as the data is current. Glue will keep track of whether the source data has changed, and if the source data has changed such that and the view hasn't been refreshed, it'll go back to the source data. And all of this happens with no code or maintenance required. So this is a great example of you've got another AWS service that knows how to use this table format and can just interact with it along with many other services. Athena has had Iceberg support for a while. Now it is aware of Iceberg metadata, and it can use that to improve performance. You set this up in Glue. It leads to performance improvements of up to 50%, 1.5 times faster. And so it basically understands the Iceberg metadata to know which files it should look in. And Athena is all about the fewer files you look in, the faster it is and the cheaper it is. So by doing that sort of smart query planning, it makes it far more effective. We have multiple clients who are using Athena and S3, for data analysis. And the nice thing about it is when you're not running anything, you're just paying storage, and S3 storage is very, very cheap. And so by switching to an Iceberg format, you're going to get better performance when you do run queries without paying for any ongoing compute. So it's a very cost-effective way to analyze data. Redshift has added support for writing to Iceberg. Last year they announced Iceberg Read. So now you can read and write stuff to and from Iceberg. So while Redshift has its own managed storage and its own format, it can also work with this sort of common Iceberg format. So again, now you could have Athena, Redshift, Glue, all of these things using this file format that other services, other products can use as well. So that lets you create and insert statements directly inside Redshift. They don't have delete yet because the way Iceberg works, delete is a little bit more involved, but I'm sure that is coming early next year. So if you look at all of this, this just shows that there's a significant expansion of AWS's commitment to Iceberg. It gives the opportunity to use a common open source format for structured data. So, and this is an industry-wide trend. There's more support for Iceberg in many other places. Snowflake supports it. Many other tools also support Iceberg. So especially if you're in an environment where you've got a very diverse set of sources reading and writing from your data, Iceberg is definitely something you should look at as a possible option. It just gives you a lot of flexibility, a lot of openness, and a lot of compatibility. The other area that we've seen a lot of different announcements is just sort of in analytic databases overall. AWS is continuing to improve performance and cost. There's lots of different ways to store your data. It's easier to find the right service because there's just so many options with so many different capabilities, and they all integrate very well. So one of the advantages of using the AWS ecosystem is that you get a lot of ability to sort of find the tool that's right for you, and the data is fairly good at moving between them as needed. So one of the bigger ones is S3 vector databases. So this is for generative AI, for LLMs. It is a place to store the vector embeddings, and vector embeddings are basically the machine readable versions of whatever it is that an LLM is analyzing. So whether that's a video or a picture or a block of text, it gets converted into a whole bunch of numbers. And this is a database specifically designed to store and search those numbers. When this came out earlier in 2025, it was about a 1-second response time. They've got it down to 100 milliseconds for warm query. So it's stuff that people are commonly querying. So, and it's integrated with Bedrock knowledge bases and OpenSearch. So you can basically just drop your vectors into S3 and then point Bedrock knowledge bases or OpenSearch at this, and it knows how to integrate. And the data is sitting in S3. So it has sort of the S3 cost model. It has S3 availability and durability. You pay for putting the data in. You pay for searching it, obviously. And the indexes cost, when you update the indexes, that has a cost as well. But it's a very, very cost-effective way to do LLM and vector-based operations. It's been very popular with AWS, and it got a lot of attention this year. Redshift has done a couple performance improvements. One of them is multidimensional data layouts. The details of this are fairly involved, but basically Redshift can look at what queries are being used across multiple columns and figure out how to physically lay out the tables to get up to 10 times better price performance, and automatically apply that. So other than turning it on, there's nothing you have to do. It just looks at your queries, figures out the optimal way to sort the physical data behind the scenes, and then does that. It can be normally in Redshift, you'll set sort of one sort key, and that controls how the file is laid out. This can be far more effective than that. The 10 times comparison is to single field sorting. So this is a sort of one of those like very niche small announcements that can have a very big impact on your Redshift performance. S3 tables, like the Iceberg tables, it has now the ability to have metadata. This is metadata that's not just for S3 tables, but for all of for any S3 bucket. And so you can basically get a table which you can query about not only what's in your S3 bucket right now, but what's been happening to it. So anytime someone puts something in or deletes something or does any sort of operation on your bucket, it gets journaled to these tables, and then you can query those tables like they were a database. The inventory is live, as well as having point-in-time snapshots. So you can say, hey, what was in my table, yesterday? It's a great way to manage the bucket because, S3 buckets can get very big. So you can query for large files or things that haven't been accessed or any of that stuff. This is one of many, many S3 improvements. They had about, I think, 35 improvements that they went through this year in the S3 presentation. So this is the big one, but if everyone who uses AWS uses S3, it's definitely worth sort of taking a look to see all the new stuff that's coming out to see if you can take advantage of it. The other improvement to Redshift was they added a whole bunch of improvements to their materialized views. And like with the Iceberg materialized views, this is something where Redshift pre-calculates data and effectively puts it in a separate place so you can query it very efficiently. It can now auto-refresh materialized views incrementally. You can have cascading refreshes so that basically if you have one materialized view that looks to another one, when the lower one is updated, the upper one gets updated as well. And it's extended the materialized view concept to shared data sets. So if you have multiple Redshift clusters, they can use materialized views to share data between them in a way that's more efficient. And basically the downstream Redshift clusters can know when the views update and know when they need to get new data. You can see there's a whole bunch of different ways to store and analyze your data in AWS. Redshift is sort of the high-end analytic, very powerful, very strong, very fast. You've got all the way down to S3 tables with Athena, which is the most cost-effective way to analyze your data, especially if you have sort of sporadic use cases. And now you've got sort of specialized Iceberg format as well as specialized vector databases. This really shows that AWS is expanding what they can do in the storage space and just giving you way more analytic opportunities. So with that, I think I will pass it over to Keith to talk about DevOps.
Thank you, Jeff. Great summary. Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us live and for those watching on the recording. I'm Keith McAuliffe, and in my role as CTO and head of AI at Ironside, my 2026 goals for critical stakeholders, our clients like yourself, and my fellow Ironsiders is how to bring agentic advancements to superpower engineering teams and move from being AI curious to agentic empowered. We're witnessing a pivot from the assistive AI co-pilots that require constant prompting to agentic AI, autonomous systems that reason, plan, and act. AWS's agentic AI services represent the strategic shift for how to fundamentally transform enterprise workloads. As we look to your engineering roadmaps for 2026, we need to talk about a fundamental shift in the market. For the past 2 years, we've been in the era of Copilot, tools that sit in the passenger seat while you drive. They're helpful, but they require your constant attention. Today, we're entering the era of frontier agents. These are not just chatbots that answer questions. These are autonomous systems that can inspect, analyze, and execute tasks over hours or even days without you hovering over them. I'm going to walk you through 4 specific capabilities: Kiro Autonomous Agent, Nova Act, Security Agent, and DevOps Agent, to show you how they give every single member of your team a superpower. To summarize at the high level, the main themes: from synchronous to asynchronous development. Previously, AI coding tools required a developer to be in the loop, reviewing every line as it was generated. The Kiro Autonomous Agent changes this by operating asynchronously. It runs in the background for hours or days, executing complex multi-step tasks. such as updating dependencies across 15 microservices in isolated sandbox. It plans implementation, writes code across multiple repositories, and creates pull requests without blocking the developer, allowing human engineers to focus on architecture while the agent handles implementation. From reactive gatekeeping to proactive guardianship. In traditional workflows, security and operations are reactive bottlenecks. Security reviews happen right before deployment, and ops teams react after alarms trigger. For security, the AWS security agent shifts security left by conducting automated design reviews, context-aware penetration testing, and it also does scans for it doesn't just do scans for syntax errors. It understands application logic to execute sophisticated attack chains and provides remediation for code automatically. On the operations front, the AWS DevOps agent moves from reactive firefighting to proactive prevention. It scans historical incident data to identify patterns such as dangerous auto-scaling configurations and suggests improvements to prevent future outages. From brittle automation to reliable reasoning, traditional automation like Selenium scripts break when a UI changes. Amazon Nova Act introduces a neural approach to automation, using an AI model trained to navigate web browsers with greater than 90% reliability. This allows enterprises to automate UI-heavy workloads like legacy ERP data entry or competitive market research that previously required manual human effort because they lacked APIs. Now I'll tease out each of these announcements and explain practical examples for each capability. When you receive the materials, you'll be able to click on the blue links and watch a curated reInvent session for each of these topics. The biggest constraint on your team right now is human bandwidth. Even with AI coding assistance, your developers are still tied to the keyboard. This is where Kiro Autonomous Agent changes it. It introduces asynchronous development. You can assign it a high-level task, such as update this API schema across our payment microservices, and it goes to work in the background. It doesn't just guess, it learns from your team's code reviews and existing contexts to plan multi-step changes across multiple repositories. It runs in isolated sandboxes, writes the tests, and opens up the pull request. Your developers stay in the flow state on hard problems while Kiro handles implementation and heavy lifting. But not all the work happens in the IDE. A lot of enterprises have grunt work that occurs in web browsers, filling out internal forms, extracting data from vendor portals, or running QA tests. This is where Amazon Nova Act comes in. Historically, automating these tasks required brittle scripts that broke every time a button moved. Nova Act is a new model trained specifically to take action in browsers with over 90% reliability. It handles the things that trip up other AI models, like pop-ups, date pickers, allowing you to build agents that automate back-office workflows that previously had no API access. Now, let's talk about risk. We all know the pain of the security gate, that moment right before launch where a pen test finds a critical vulnerability and we have to delay the release. The new AWS security agent in preview eliminates that bottleneck by embedding security from day one. You define your organizational standards once, encryption methods, logging rules, and the agent validates your architecture against them continuously. But there is a wow factor. It performs contextual penetration testing. It doesn't just run a generic scan. It reads your design docs, understands your API logic, and autonomously creates attack chains to find vulnerabilities. Internal teams at AWS have used this to find business logic bugs that standard scanners missed. And when it finds a bug, it doesn't just alert you. It generates a remediation plan to code the fix, allowing your teams to approve and keep on moving. Finally, let's talk about 2 a.m. on a Saturday, when an incident happens, and your me time to resolution is usually defined by how fast a human can wake up and parse logs. The AWS DevOps agent, also in preview, acts as an autonomous on-call engineer. When the alarm triggers, it investigates immediately. It builds a topology map of your application to understand the dependencies. It queries CloudWatch, checks GitHub for recent deployments, and correlates that data to find the root cause. At reInvent, we saw a demo in which the agent identified where a bad code deployment caused a cache serialization error, and it automatically generated the rollback plan. But perhaps more importantly, it's preventative. It scans your past incidents to find patterns, like a reoccurring misconfiguration in an auto-scaling group, and suggests architectural changes to prevent the outage from ever happening again. So what are the key takeaways? Kiro gives you parallel processing for development. Nova Act unlocks automation for the browser. Security Agent turns penetration testing into an on-demand capability. And the DevOps agent turns operations from reactive to preventative. We at Ironside believe this isn't just about buying new tools. It's about re-architecting how your teams interact with software. We're ready to help you deploy these agents safely, setting up the guardrails and integration points so you can start seeing the gains immediately. Thank you for your time today. I'm happy to take questions at the end for those attending our session live, or please feel free to schedule a complimentary tailored briefing to see how you can embrace these capabilities in your organization. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tim to handle any Q&A and perform our session close. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Keith. Appreciate it very much. Again, Jeff, Josh, Catherine, Keith, really exciting to hear all of these capabilities. I don't believe we have any questions in the chat. If you have any, we're happy to spend a couple of minutes today. I think really the team has nicely expressed our point of view on all of the new capabilities that have been released. Again, I want to reiterate that from our standpoint, like, finding the right piece of technology is really secondary to really identifying and understanding strategically how to leverage your data and leverage the capabilities that AI provides to improve your business, right? That's really the key thing. In every project that every project is always related and focused on use cases. We encourage you to do the same. We also know that there's a lot of technology that's been deployed in your businesses over many, many, many years, right? So ultimately, the bottom line is really focus on why you're doing these things. We would really love to engage and have specific conversations with you about your environment and your challenges and your aspirations with AI. I think that you can just shoot us an email at awspartner@ironsidegroup.com. You can use the QR code, which will initiate your mail client, hopefully, if it works. Just super excited to have the opportunity to help our customers navigate what is really an exciting time. I do think that there's a lot of opportunity, and we'd love to engage with you to talk both strategically and tactically. We'd encourage you, if you're not using AI, to really focus on it. We'd love to talk to you about how to do that. So with that, I will close. And again, thank everyone for their time, as well as the Ironside team for sharing your experience. And look forward to connecting one-on-one with each of you over the next couple of weeks. Excellent. Thank you so much.